Welcome to the Big Screen Bulls podcast, a podcast where Caleb Kindle and Christian McCrite give their reviews and reactions to what's happening on the big screen. They talk about films, TV series, and other forms of media entertainment. Episodes are released every Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. Be sure to follow the show's Instagram page at Big Screen Bulls Podcast, where new hints and updates will be released about future episodes.
Welcome back to the Big Screen Bulls Podcast, where you have me, Caleb Kindle, and you have my amigo, Christian McCrite, here on the line.
I've gone from financial officer to amigo, slowly making my way over all these different titles.
Yeah, the other day I had to look up synonym for friend or partner or companion just so I can have more names for Christian for these podcasts.
What's the most exotic way I can say friend without sounding completely white? That's funny. Speaking of titles, we are back into House of the Dragon today with our full season 1 review after all the episodes have come out.
So this is how you know this is a serious podcast, because we're actually starting something and finishing it all in the same year.
That's right. So please share with all your friends, share with your family, share with anybody that you can.
Random strangers.
Random strangers on the street. Anyways, let's jump right in. What did you think about the show and how it handled the time skip?
Okay, time skip. Yeah, that was honestly that was one of the biggest. I don't know if complaints would be the right word for it, but maybe a tad bit of issues that I would see come up through it. I know, talking to a lot of people that had really watched the show, I know they mentioned time skips really brought, they thought, a lot of character inconsistencies within the show. I think in some ways I could buy the characters maybe acting a little bit different just because the time skips have changed their personality completely. But other than that, I think it was, and again, it's going to be biased, a little bit of a high off just watching the show. I think they still played it pretty well. Like they played their hand the way they needed to play their hand. Like they needed to show the relationship of Rhaenyra. They needed to show the relationship of the Hightowers, Daemon, the kind of disputes with the kids.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of kids now, by the way.
Yeah.
And spoilers aplenty for this season. So please go watch it.
Honestly, we probably need to at least invest in like a little, like, before even the podcast starts, before we even start talking, just like in the intro to say spoilers alert.
Yeah. big warning sign.
Yeah. But I guess, what did you think of it? And then I think overall, like, what's the whole overall feel, just to give us that big 1-2 punch, that spinning back fist,
spinning backflip karate chop? No, I was actually kind of concerned about the time skip initially, and that was because, like, they had already made us invested in these people who are playing these specific roles, and so it's very hard to take half of the people out of that and replace them with new people.
Yeah.
Some of them look similar enough. I feel like with the new actor for Rhaenyra, that the gap between her new actor and her new actress and old actress, they do definitely look and feel like two different people.
Yeah.
Alicent Hightower, the person that they got to play the older version of her, actually looks closer to like the original.
Yeah, I thought it was honestly the same person that they aged
I thought
up
it was too, but it actually is not.
Yeah.
So it's very well done. But I was concerned because I've listened to other people talk about it. I've talked to some of my friends about it. I even listened to the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, the time skip is why would you do such a crazy thing?" And it's like, well, this book, this series, this TV show covers so much ground in a short period of time, and so you kind of have to.
I'm glad you listened to that Joe Rogan podcast, because I listened to the same one, and I was almost a tad bit more furious watching that podcast than I did
Yeah,
she's an
right.
8 in some instances, the way they were
Yeah.
showing a
How
few
dare they
things,
have a
yeah.
different opinion than
Exactly.
me?
They
But
say
no,
a Sith only deals in absolutes, but dang,
That's
here at the
right.
Big Screen Bowls podcast, we went to the dark side, I guess.
that's right. That's right. Always.
But no, I like what that was the biggest thing I was scared about before the time jump was the character changes
Right.
and just being scared that it's not going to be the same person anymore.
Well, yeah, because you've rooted for these people so far, and some of them don't look older at all. Like Sir Kristen Cole, like hasn't aged like he's probably aged like about 2 days. And
Same
then,
actor, yeah. He just found the secret remedy.
Yeah, the
Maesters gave him the sauce to make him
the
last longer.
secret sauce. Matt Smith, who plays Daemon Targaryen. I mean, he's still the same. But I really like that portion because I really like him as Daemon.
Yeah.
But there were some things they did really well with it. But they do change a few things around, but like now they have all these kids involved. And honestly, that's one of the best parts in my opinion.
Yeah. You can just add this new fresh view of kids within all of this and it's kind of unique of just the rivalry they have within this, because again, of course, you get One-Eye Willie.
One-Eye Willie. Okay,
who gets his eye chopped out, and he's got a very strong dislike for the Strongs.
Yes. So for background context, Rhaenyra had she had kids with someone who is not her gay husband, and they take the last name of Strong for that original family, but she kind of puts them under the cloak of, oh, well, no, they're actually my rightful kids, and they're actually, you know, the legitimate heirs to the throne and whatnot, and to Driftmark. And a lot of people are really skeptical about it because they obviously don't look a whole lot like a Targaryen or a Valyrian, because they're like fair skinned and like black hair or like dark brown hair, which is very not either of those houses.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of conflict there of the legitimacy of her kids, which are named Jacaerys and Lucerys, aka Jason Luke. And she has a third one on the way named Viserys.
Yeah, so she had she's got 5 kids in total. She has, again, the ones you named, Joffrey is her third born.
Joffrey,
and then she has Aegon the third,
and then
Viserys.
And, so she's got all these kids now.
3 with
this guy named Lord Strong,
and then 2 of them with her uncle.
Her uncle / new husband, Daemon Targaryen. Warning approaching with all that stuff. That happens. And so that creates a whole lot of conflict because Alicent Hightower, she, like, after King Viserys's wife dies, she gets with him and they have kids. And by technical means, they are also the rightful heirs to the throne, but the king named Rhaenyra as his rightful heir. And so that's why things get super mixed up, because you have like these 2 branched off families that are all kind of legitimate to the Iron Throne in different ways. And that's why this whole thing is based off of what is to come as the Dance of the Dragons.
Yeah. And then, like, you talk about implement danger that's going to come about, like intimate danger that's coming. In Game of Thrones, it was the White Walkers. This massive army from the north is going to come down and destroy the whole entire kingdom. Every time it would cut to them, it was pretty uneventful in some ways. The immediate issue or the main conflict that's going to come up here in House of Dragons is just the provoking of civil war.
Right, exactly.
Between the 2 deadliest families within the 7 kingdoms right now. Hightowers and Targaryens, which Targaryens, the Hightowers are kind of the same.
Are still kind of mixed in a different way.
The greens and the blacks, I guess you could.
Right.
That's how they refer to them kind of in the show, is like the green team versus black team.
Yeah. And so it gets extremely complicated, and the kids, they clearly don't like each other. They tease around quite a bit. One of them, which is my favorite character out of all the kid characters, is Aemon Targaryen. He has got an aura about him. So basically, as a kid, the other kids play a prank on him because as a Targaryen, you're supposed to get a dragon. You're supposed to get your own personal dragon. You kind of get it while it's young, and you train it, and it kind of is like your dragon. That is
Very
yours.
Messed up way of how to train your dragon.
Yeah, not a light-hearted, fun adventure like that one is. It's actually a pretty dangerous task.
Yep.
And so they prank him by giving him a large pig with wings on it, and that's really mean. Like, that's really cruel. And so like he's really upset. And so what he does is he actually goes behind everyone's back, and he goes to try to get Daemon's, well, his ex-wife, technically, his wife,
widowed, or
so Daemon took a wife, and she was having a horrible, painful childbirth that just wasn't going through, and it was so horrible that she basically just said, I'm just going to end my life, and she has her dragon burn her. So now her dragon technically doesn't have a rider of sorts, and so Aemon goes behind everyone's back as a child, as a young child, to ride this dragon like in the middle of the night. Now, this is the largest dragon of any of the dragons.
Yeah, it's
massive.
Vhagar. This is Vhagar. This is a dragon that had helped conquer the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah.
They say its size at the time is the size of Balerion the Dread, the all-black dragon that was ridden by the Aegon the First when he conquered Westeros, that was able to burn the largest castle in the Seven Kingdoms, Harrenhal. Right. This dragon is the same caliber and same size now as that dragon. So this is the most powerful dragon in the Seven Kingdoms at the time.
And it's massive.
And he's a kid.
Yeah, this guy is probably around 10 years old, or at least 10 to 12. He's young. And but he gets on the dragon, and he eventually becomes its rider, and he comes back and he's having a fight with all the kids, and he's basically like, it's my dragon now. And Rhaenyra's kids are like, no, like that was the dragon that was supposed to be part of our family. You can't do that. And so then they start fighting, and Lucerys ends up taking a dagger and slicing through Aemon's eye, and obviously rendering it useless. And they have a whole debacle where both the families meet up, and Aemon's eye, or where it used to be, is being stitched together, and Alicent Hightower almost tries to stab Rhaenyra. There's a lot of dramatic tension. Now, she doesn't go through with it directly. She does cut her.
Yeah, and you see these character changes as well, too, where you started off in the first half of it, Rhaenyra was kind of like the dragon. She was the wild child. She didn't want to go by her responsibility. She just wanted to go on like her whim and what she wanted to do, when Alicent was the exact opposite.
Right.
She was one that wanted to be for duty, for honor, for the family, all this. And you're starting to watch like their roles switch a little bit.
Yeah.
Like Alicent's like starting to become a little crazier and mad because she spent her whole entire life trying to be good and be proper and all this. And she's done all that and still watches Rhaenyra still able to like cheat life and cheat destiny.
Right.
In a lot of ways. And you're starting to see like their characters flip-flop, where Rhaenyra is becoming a more level-headed person.
Yes.
And Alicent is now starting to become the more manic, crazier.
Right. And her dad, Otto Hightower, is like fostering her like newfound, not pleasure, but like involvement in actually the political play of the Iron Throne. And she has 3 kids. She has Aemon Targaryen, which is not the oldest, but the oldest is Aegon.
Aegon the Second, and this is a little bit confusing because there's 3 characters in Game of Thrones right now with the same exact name. You have Aegon the First, who conquered Westeros.
Yes.
Aegon the Second, which is Alicent Hightower's son, and then you have Aegon the Third, which is Rhaenyra and Daemon's child together.
So there's Aegons galore.
There's 3 Aegons in total. One's dead, other one's fully grown. Second one's just a baby.
But you know what they say: don't keep your Aegons in one basket. Anyways, sorry, that was terrible. I tried to think of something. But Aegon is he's a piece of crap. He's dumb. Like, he's just not very intelligent.
Very lustful.
Super lazy,
man.
Very lustful, he's very perverted. He does some horrible things, and he just doesn't care. He doesn't care about any of it. He doesn't want any of it. He doesn't want any of the responsibility. And so after a while, let me back up for just a moment, because as there's 2 time skips in this. There's a time skip to where it's many years later and they have all these kids, and then after Aemon gets his eye cut by Rhaenyra's kid Lucerys, there's another time skip where they're older.
Yep.
Like, all the kids are older. And Aemon got really tall, and he's got a really strong aura about him that's honestly unsettling and intimidating. And I really like it.
Yeah.
And but Aegon is older too, and so what I want to get to is King Viserys is gradually getting in more, just horrible condition. He lost an arm.
Yep. The first time skip, he lost his arm.
Yes.
Second time skip within this season, he's barely even a functioning human being.
Yeah. He's in constant pain. And so he constantly has to take all these sorts of medications to even keep himself from being in immense pain. But if he doesn't take it, he's a little bit more consciously aware, but he's in too much pain to handle.
Yeah. And just to give you guys a heads up too, since we've kind of done more of our research on it, they're giving him a drug called milk of the poppy.
Yes.
Milk of the poppy, basically it's a pain reliever. But just like most opioids and stuff like that, it makes you a little bit more loopier and crazy.
Right.
So that's kind of the whole.
Super Benadryl.
Yeah, it's kind of that's what it is, really. If you're ever wondering when they mention milk of the poppy, if you are a watcher of it, wanting to know really what it is, that's really the whole purpose of it. Is it's a painkiller that.
Yeah, it's mentioned multiple times throughout both shows.
It almost acts exactly like an opioid, because you take too much of it, it'll kill you too.
Yeah. So. His condition's getting so much worse, and you feel really bad for him, because now he wears like a wrap around his face. He wears like part of the mask,
yeah,
and has a wrap underneath it. But I want to let you talk about this first for a moment. But the point that I'm getting to is there ends up being a scene which I think is the best scene in the entire whole season, and it is the scene where both families actually come together and sit at the table and share a meal and just talk.
And I guess before we even jump into that, I just wanted to, again, what we're kind of doing here, we're just talking about characters, is we get to watch character changes. And I know some people hated that. I honestly loved it. We watched Daemon go from when you see him in the first half of the season to the second half. You see him as a very ambitious, wanting to take his brother's throne from him and all this stuff. From when he moves out east, when he moves out there, it's more of he relaxes. He becomes a lot less like himself on the ambition portion of things,
mm-hmm.
And almost loses a piece of himself within his peace and quiet. And you see that he drags that into the later seasons, when he even helps his brother onto the throne when he falls off, when he's in a terrible shape, and picks up his crown and puts it on his head. That's completely out of character if you'd have looked at the first half of the first season, but it's completely different now, because he's just a different person after these time skips, and he's lived a different life than what he was having to live beforehand.
Yeah, and he actually seems to care.
Exactly. He cares about his wife, which is now Rhaenyra. He cares
Yeah.
about his brother, who's in terrible shape. Which, again, I think everybody's like that too. When family gets in ill health, just outlook changes on them a little bit too.
Yeah. I definitely.
Like I said, Rhaenyra changes from being more free-spirited, free-hearted to actually being somewhat of a good queen.
Yeah.
Alicent becomes the opposite.
She becomes very, well, like, not like psychotic, but she becomes in panic mode. Like, a lot of that, she's afraid that because Rhaenyra is the claimed heir to the Iron Throne, then she's afraid that that will mean the death of her kids, which is a fair reason to be panicked.
Yeah.
Sure.
And can I get an L in the comments, man? Sir Christian Cole turns evil, man. We spent, I'd love to count how long we talked about Sir Christian Cole within the first podcast, and how much, how honorable, how awesome he was. He beat Daemon in a battle. Now he's kind of, I don't know.
He's kind of thrown to the side a little bit. He doesn't really have that much to do other than to give dirty looks to Rhaenyra and her kids. He does a couple things that are very questionable, especially like they're having like this big meeting, and this one guy's trying to get up and trying to leave, and Sir Christian Cole like tries to sit him back down, and he shoves him down into the chair or onto the table so hard that it busts his skull open.
And this isn't just an individual. This is like the maester, right?
Yeah, this is one of the people of the small council.
This is the high maester. This is like literally like fifth or sixth most important individual in the Seven Kingdoms.
This is a table full of the most important people in all the Seven Kingdoms. And he just literally grabs him and shoves him down onto the table and splits his head open. And he just dies.
Yeah. But yeah, no, we get to see him turn into, like, he lived his life for honor and glory and virtue. And then we see, and I will say this, Rhaenyra kind of did him dirty to like make him give him feelings, and then really pull that away from him like it was nothing to her.
Right. And so now, because of everything that's happened, he's less of a Kingsguard and more of just he's loyal to Alicent at all costs.
Yeah.
And that's kind of his character now.
Yeah, that exactly is. And then, like, another scene that would make him a little bit less questionable is like basically Alicent's like, go ahead and just kill Rhaenyra. And he draws his sword. It gets just going over there to take her down, and like, and then the other Kingsguard stop him or something like that. Like,
I mean, it's
I don't know how you're not thrown out of the Kingsguard at that point when you're getting ready to try to kill the future.
He's done about 6 or 7 things that should have gotten him get kicked out of the Kingsguard.
Talk about Jon Snow level plot armor on Sir Christian Cole.
That's right.
But to answer your question, again, enough of the character changes. The scene you're talking about when they're all kind of together as a family, I'll actually go a little bit before that. I think one of the most powerful scenes was right before that, when they're disputing over who should get Driftmark after the death of the sea snake.
Okay, yeah.
And the sea snake actually before this says something that I thought was pretty crazy. One of my favorite things I've ever heard. And if this was ever said in history, kudos to whoever said this, but history does not remember blood. It just remembers names. Talking about he doesn't really care about the ancestry of his kids at that point. But then cutting into this scene here, they're getting ready to decide. Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, is getting ready to basically decide for the king over if Rhaenyra's second-born son should be able to get Driftmark.
Right.
When it should be an obvious ploy of him to get it because he's in line to receive it. And they're getting ready to vote. And of course, they're going to vote not in favor of Rhaenyra. And King Viserys waddles his way to the throne. And this is one of the most dramatic scenes, I think, in the whole entire series, where you have the announcer that sets it up perfectly. Now introducing King Viserys, first of his name, and all the music. The music's beautiful.
It's so good.
And he's just kind of like walking up there. Again, Daemon helps him get onto the throne, puts the crown on his head, and he disputes, or he says that, why is this in question, Rhaenyra's kids? are inheritors of Driftmark, and the Sea Snake's brother, which I can't remember his name right now, comes out and says he can't be the inheritor of Driftmark because he's not a Valarian.
Yeah.
He is a
he turns around. He's like they are bastards.
Yeah, and screams it, and then Viserys, of course, gets up in anger, pulls his dagger out, and is like, "We'll have your tongue for that." And then, one of the cool scenes again, Daemon pulls his sword out, chops just the top of his head off, where his tongue still stays there. He's like, "Don't worry, he can keep his tongue."
I just thought that was so cool. He has so many of my favorite scenes in House of the Dragon, especially right before we get back to the dinner table scene.
I talked too long.
No.
Talk about the dinner table
no. It's
scene
totally fine. You just made me think of this hilarious meme that I saw, and I wanted to share with all of you. So Daemon eventually goes down into basically the underbelly, where another immensely large dragon lives, very scary looking, and he sings. He's singing as he's kind of walking his way to the platform underneath, like very, very dark, with just a torch in his hand. He's singing in High Valyrian, basically to this dragon. This dragon's enormous and scary looking. It's got a messed up face. It's seen some battles. And the meme I was thinking of was, and definitely how I would have preferred it in the show is, I wish he would have sang "I Want It That Way" by Backstreet Boys. That's the meme that I saw. I just thought it was hilarious. Go look that up. It's awesome. But yeah, it's a very intense scene because Daemon, he cuts off like just the top, like half of his head, kind of like in like a diagonal motion, and he kind of falls down, and he looks at him and is like, "You can keep his tongue." And it's just like, I wasn't expecting it at all. So that was pretty fun. But
talking about this whole table. So in this kind of time frame, King Viserys is trying to mend the divide that's going on between the Greens and the Blacks, both sides of his family. And he hasn't been taking any milk of the poppy to settle his pain. So he's in enormous pain right now, but trying to bring his family all together. They all sit down at a table. He has this heartwarming speech of what he wants to have the men's be fixed between them. And he's sorry that it's came to this, and everybody has to call each other enemies. And then Alicent and Rhaenyra.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but if it's okay with you, I'd like to read the quote that he actually says from the speech.
That's great. I didn't know that's what I saw you on your phone over there, but I know what you're looking at.
He says, "My own face is no longer a handsome one, if indeed it ever was. But tonight, I wish you to see me as I am." Now he's taking off his mask. He's taking off his wrap at this point, and you can see that he has lost one of his eyes. Like it's just a socket now. And he looks like half of the Mummy from the whole Brendan Fraser movie. Like his cheek is like missing most of its flesh. But anyways, he says, "But tonight, I wish you to see me as I am, not just as a king, but your father, your brother, your husband, and your grandsire, who may not, it seems, walk for much longer among you. Let us no longer hold ill feelings in our hearts. The crown cannot stand strong if the House of the Dragon remains divided. Set aside your grievances, if not for the sake of the crown, then for the sake of this old man who loves you all so dearly." I'm not going to lie. When that scene came up, I was pretty close. I was pretty close to shedding some tears.
Yeah.
The music was so dramatic, and I was really feeling it. I'm like, this guy, King Viserys, was really a great king.
Yeah.
He didn't have to be some sort of conqueror. And, we talked about in the last episode of what, he's struggling with something like that, but he just tries to be a good person.
I'll show you my notes here. It's something I had in my notes. The GOAT Viserys.
Oh yeah, the GOAT. That's the greatest of all time.
The second, honestly, he's the greatest king we've ever seen in a Game of Thrones franchise deal.
I mean, it's just, and even, George R.R. Martin told the guy who plays King Viserys that he plays him better than he actually wrote the character in the book.
Yeah.
How insane is that? How insane. That has got to be the highest praise from the person who wrote this entire franchise.
And shout out to the Joe Rogan podcast here, who said he was off acting. I can't.
I just don't agree with that. I thought he is fantastic.
Yep.
And he ended up being my favorite person in the whole show.
Yep. No, exactly. And then, yeah, he has that scene. We actually see some reconnecting, some rekindling of friendships between Rhaenyra and Alicent. And they're looking at each other like, we can mend this. We can be friends again. And just when they say that, Aemon stands up and makes a toast. Like everybody's at this point making toasts and stuff like that. Aemon gets up, makes a toast of, and to my strong boy nephews.
Yeah.
And again, make sure to emphasize the word strong. As in that was their bastard father's
name,
lordship name. And it gets to a point where they get so mad. Jace runs up to him and punches him right in the face.
Yeah.
This shows you how big of a badass Aemon is here. He takes the punch like a champ and holds his drink still. Doesn't spill a drop of it.
Yeah. It's just he took the exact right moment to just slide in there and just deal a sucker punch to Rhaenyra's family. And this was right after like Alicent and Rhaenyra are holding their cups. Like they stand up and actually say a toast to your house and to your kids and to what we can do together. And King Viserys is looking around. There's no dialogue. It's just music. And he's looking around, looking at everyone, laughing, having a good time, talking, having a few drinks, eating food, like just nudging each other some, just having really just a good, wholesome time. And you can see that like he begins to fade from like he gets his happy moment before he begins to basically fade off.
And he deserved it.
He did deserve it. And so then Aemon comes in and ruins it with that.
Yeah.
After all of that.
And that's why you kind of mentioned like the kids are like make the second half of it. And that's the reason why, is because now their beef with each other is stronger than Rhaenyra's and Alicent's is to each other.
It's less about Rhaenyra versus Alicent, and it's more about like their kids versus their kids. That's what's really at the heart of all of this right now.
Yeah. And then I guess the point after all this is said and done, Viserys does end up passing.
And he has like a vague prophecy that he talks about the Song of Ice and Fire.
Yep.
And Alicent perceives this as, oh, my kid Aegon is supposed to be on the throne.
Yep. So they have this big plotting moment where they're like, this is what it's going to take to get Aegon on the throne. Alicent thinks that they're shooting this off the cuff. And the whole small council's sitting there like, we kind of had this plan the whole entire time, no matter.
Yeah, she gets pissed.
Oh, yeah. And but yeah, this is kind of shows like how the small council was always going to be for the Greens compared to Rhaenyra's side of things.
Yeah. Jason Lannister. The Lannisters. Jason Lannister immediately says, so shall we carry on the plan as proceeded? And she literally is like, are you kidding me? Like, you guys have been doing this the whole time?
Yeah. And you still see like Alicent will still pull you in a little bit and be like, okay, she's somewhat of a noble character, starting to like her again. And those are one of those moments of like, some of these things she can't help. It's the people that are surrounding her, her dad, the Lannisters, the people at the table.
Right. But then she leans so heavily into this vague prophecy that she believes is about her son specifically, that's what causes her to slowly more and more become less likable in the last few episodes, is because she's like, my kid has to be on the throne regardless. This is just how it is. And so they have this big ceremony. They have it in the dragon pit.
Well, they have to find Aegon first. I think that was a big moment.
He goes missing. He goes running because Viserys passes away. It's very sad, and Aegon just goes off running. And so you have two different parties looking for him.
You have Alicent's party, which she commissions Kristen Cole and her son Aemon, who's actually up to par. And even at this moment too, he's considered to be a better fighter than Sir Kristen Cole as well, too,
Right.
who's witnessed to be one of the greatest fighters in the Seven Kingdoms.
So it's her party and then her father's party, Otto Hightower.
And you get to see some new characters that don't get a lot of screen time. You see Eric and Arik, the two twin brothers. And this is what I really like about this episode is it gives the Kingsguard personalities for once in their life. It's not just like Jaime or the Kingsguard are just evil, despicable human beings. These are individuals with thoughts. You see kind of like a nudge to like Sir Barristan the Bold in the first Game of Thrones when you have the commander of the Kingsguard take his robe off and puts it down and says, "I'm not going to be on the Kingsguard until there's a king that's actually crowned." Yeah. Like he was watching all this, everybody, small council, all this deceiving, all this backstabbing. And he's like, I don't have any part of it. Yeah. And you see Eric as well too have the same exact deal. Aegon's a terrible person. He has no desire. He doesn't want to be king. I've had to watch him. I've had to track him down in the worst parts of Flea Bottom here in the Seven Kingdoms. Yeah. He's a terrible person. He's not super intelligent. And he is not even that great of a fighter either. Basically, in nearly every category, Aemond is a better fit for the Iron Throne. Yeah. But Aemond's got a vengefulness to him, though. Yeah. And that's his downfall. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But even just, if you want to touch on that scene, I thought that was just a powerful scene, too. And Aemond and Aegon had that conversation of. He finally catches him. Like they run out of the sept and Aemond's running down these stairs and he tackles Aegon and Aegon is basically like in his face, like, I don't want it. I don't want to do it. And I wouldn't be a good king. And Aemond just smiles and goes, "You'll get no argument from me." And it's just very calm and cold. And I love it. And then so things switch from that to like the other side at Dragonstone, where Rhaenyra and Daemon and their kids and all of them, they're preparing to take the next steps to see what they're supposed to do to try to gain allies, because they kind of have a rough idea of what's coming. And so after they catch Aegon and people have conversations with him, they decide to crown him in the dragon pit in front of a bunch of people. And then Rhaenys, she is Viserys' sister. She goes into the under part of the dragon pit and she finds her dragon. And in the middle of the crowning ceremony, she busts out, which kills a bunch of people. She busts out on her dragon and she roars, or sorry, her dragon roars. Not her. Yeah, she roars with her dragon. Yeah. Her dragon roars directly in the face of Alicent Hightower, Aegon, Aemond, Otto. I mean, during his crowning, during his crowning moment, and you could see even Aegon starting to feel a little bit like, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be king. All these people are cheering for me, and then, boom! There comes a dragon. Yeah, I mean, in some regard, I don't always like this scene, and that's because like part of me is like, okay, like I get it, that's pretty cool, because she roars at them and then she lets them live and goes away, and then part of me is like, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you burn them? Well, it's not my war to fight. Well, really? You kind of chose your side already by doing that, and so you're going to be a fugitive either way. So, I mean, that's just my thought process. I know that was a little bit of a different one, but yeah, again, you can't ruin the story too. Yeah, you can't skip to the end too early. Can't get the story off. I know I saw so many memes that were just like somebody crying, like, "Please do it." But so then like officially, since Aegon is named the king, and Aegon, once he receives praises from the masses, then he starts to like be like, oh, I kind of like this. Because of course, he's a piece of crap person. So he's officially named the king. And so then Rhaenyra and Daemon Targaryen have to try to get allies and stuff. And you kind of see her come into her own as being like this thoughtful and calculated, and like she is mild-mannered in her
in the ways that she deals with all these people who are basically like, yeah, let's go to war, let's do it, because obviously Damon really wants to, and Damon gets frustrated, like, but why don't you get more angry about this? And she's like, well, there's no reason to be, we're
And Damon goes back to a little bit of himself.
his old self.
Yeah, and this is like I kind of like about just the whole series in general too. It's like, since we're not jumping around to 5 or 6 different locations between the Wall, Winterfell, Lannisport, the capital, Dorne, the East, all this, we're able to move things a lot faster. We're able to get more attached to characters, and we see Damon at a scene at the end of the first season where Robb Stark was at the end of the second season. So we were able to skip through basically 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, in my opinion, because we didn't mess around as much and introduce that many characters.
Right. You kind of see him get back into his old self because he's getting angry, he's getting irritable, and he even, for a moment, gets right up in Rhaenyra's face and grabs her by the throat for just a moment.
Oh, yeah.
Before he backs off. And Rhaenyra's 2 strong kids, Lucerys and Jason Luke, they're like, well, dragons are powerful and they're good symbols, and we can take them to different places and perhaps get some of these allies on our side by showing like 1, we're willing to negotiate and not fight, and 2, bringing our dragons as like a symbol of our authority.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's not a bad idea.
Hey, that's pretty nice.
Hey, that's pretty good. So she allows Jacaerys to go see a couple people, including Lord Creek and Stark, which we have not seen that part yet.
Yeah.
But she allows Lucerys to go talk to the Lord of Storm's End, the Baratheon, Boros Baratheon. And this is the first time we actually get to see Storm's End, which is super cool. And Lucerys' dragon is very small. He is riding his dragon out to the Storm's End to try to send a message to say, hey, Boros Baratheon, you should uphold to your father's oath and be on Rhaenyra's side. So he flies there. It's storming outside. And by the way, the CGI in this episode is phenomenal. It's top notch. He flies over to Storm's End, and there's lightning and thunder. And one of the coolest things is like he lands his dragon. His dragon's not super big. It's in actuality quite smaller than most all the others. It is probably the size of, I don't know, probably a handful of horses put together. It's not that big.
Yeah, 2 or 3 horses, almost like a Pegasus.
Yeah. And so it's just not that big. It's not grown yet. And he lands it, and the guards are there kind of waiting for him and whatnot. Then he looks over, and there's a flash of lightning. And you can see that Aemon Targaryen's dragon Vhagar is there, and he's so large because he's just looming over these castle walls. Whereas Lucerys' dragon is like a small, like a Pegasus almost, that lands directly in the center. And you can just see like the sheer size difference. So he walks in, and then I'll let you talk about it. I'll let you talk about this portion.
Yeah, so he goes in and says that, hey, you should stand with our family. You swore to them. Did all this. And Baratheon, again, being pretty bold since he has...
And illiterate. he gives him like the written message, and he grabs it, and he like rolls his eyes like, oh gosh, I have to read this, but he can't. So he's like, where's the maester? So the maester has to read it for him and tell him. But anyways.
Yeah. But yeah, it tells him that, and it's like, so what have you given me in exchange for my loyalty to you? Aemon here agreed to marry one of my daughters, and he's sitting over there, and he's like, well, I'm already betrothed to marry somebody. I can't do that. He's like, well, then I've chosen what side I'm going to be standing for in this war. I said, okay. Turns around, he's getting ready to walk out, and Aemon says, no, wait, before we head out, how about I rip out one of your eyes for you, like you did to me? And he pulls back his eye patch that he's been wearing this whole time, and he has a sapphire put in where his eyes should be.
Yeah.
Which is exactly like how the books had written it out to be. And it's kind of more of an intimidating type of look. And again, you said Boris Baratheon.
Yeah.
He said, no, he's got to leave. He's an invoice. He didn't bring a weapon or anything like that. He's not here to fight. Let him go. That's not how things are done here.
Yeah. Aemon gets real angry.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He gets real angry. And then you see the rush of Lucerys get onto his dragon, fly away, see if he can get away. And he notices that Aemon's chasing after him with his dragon.
Yes.
And you see this conflict of them going at it. And it's more, it seems like to me, is Aemon is not trying to really hurt. Like
he's not trying to kill him.
They're not trying to kill each other by any means. They're just like, he's trying to scare him and stuff like that. He's trying to put fear into him before this war starts. And at this point, Erox, Lucerys' dragon, has a little bit of its own mind of its own. It's tired of being chased around by Vhagar and breathes fire into its neck. Vagar's mad at this point. It's like, ow, that hurt. And so then Aemon's trying to get control of Vhagar, which he can't get control of right now. And Vhagar just goes in, swoops him for the kill. So large, eats Erox and Lucerys up in one bite.
Yeah.
Splits the dragon, and it splits the dragon in half when it bites it. And you can just see the sheer size of how large Vhagar is compared to Erox at this time. And you see kind of the look on Aemon's face like, oh boy.
Like, I just messed up.
Yeah.
Like not like if the war hasn't already started, it's definitely going to start now.
Then it cuts to Rhaenyra's face, like,
as Daemon Targaryen goes like up to her and like turns her around, basically. Like, and there's no like dialogue, you can't hear any talking, but you can just see her kind of back off a little bit and hold her stomach. She's overwhelmed with, well, her son's dead.
Yeah.
Which means that the Dance of Dragons has officially started.
And the only thing I was keeping Rhaenyra sane in my mind was just the love for her kids and the love for the kingdom.
Right.
And love for her kids comes before the love of the kingdom.
Yeah. So now that her kid's dead.
Yeah, I think it's about to be full Dany Targaryen going mad, or Aegon, or I'm thinking of the Mad King. Aerys.
Yeah.
Yep. Aerys, like, mad level, looking in our face.
Yep.
But I guess it's an overview as well, too, just my overall thoughts of this series and stuff like that. And I want to hear yours, too. And I think my wife had the idea, again, men that aren't married, be prepared. Men that are married, you already know. Listen to your wives when they give you recommendations. So I'm going to rate this on 1 out of 5 popcorns.
Popcorn
bowls.
Popcorn bowls.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to rate this 4.5 out of 5 popcorn bowls. This series, in my opinion, was almost the creme de la creme of what we were looking for in Game of Thrones. And I heard somebody else compare it to this, but this saved the Game of Thrones franchise.
I agree.
And I think I heavily do agree with that. This did save the dumpster fire that was season 8.
Yes.
Where we watched characters not act like themselves. We watched the whole entire meaning of the show changed. We watched Goofy and Goofier. Dumb and Dumber.
Characters development thrown out the window.
Yeah.
Daenerys forgot about the Iron Fleet. They it's not really an inside joke. It's a joke between me and my old roommate, which I mentioned multiple times, Zach Edwards. There's another interview over like seasons like 6, 7, and 8 of Game of Thrones where the co-creators really were like focusing on making like a zombie polar bear, and they're like, regardless of how it fit in, we really just wanted to have a zombie polar bear. And I'm like, that is funny for a second, but then it kind of makes you think, how much care did they really put into these? Like, they didn't.
Yeah.
And I understand it might be a hard position to come from to finish a TV series that's finishing before the book series is even finished. Yeah. But if that's the case, I feel like that other people or George R.R. Martin should have had more control or more of a say over what could have happened.
Yeah.
And if you needed to draw it out a few more seasons, just to make it stick the landing a little better, I would have gone for that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give House of the Dragon also a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Yeah.
Popcorn bowls. Sorry.
Popcorn bowls. There you go.
Popcorn bowls. Now I'm getting into the habit. I've talked to a few of my friends, one of which particularly always has something negative to say about House of the Dragon, and I dismiss it as much as I can. I always try to look for the good and the bad things in every show, as we should from an objective standpoint. And it's easy to ride the wave of nostalgia from the first season of Game of Thrones. It's very iconic. This show is very different, and I think it's different in the right way.
Especially very different than the very end of Game of Thrones. Again, I was thinking to myself, and I said it during the first podcast that we did, what were we looking for in this? And I said, being a naive child a couple months ago, when we first did that, I was like, I want to see the dragons. I want to see the action. It's like, now looking back on that, that's what season 7 and season 8 got wrong, is they wanted all this action and cool stuff added onto it, and we forgot the thing that made Game of Thrones the Game of Thrones.
The characters and the story.
The game.
Yeah.
The political drama that is Game of Thrones. That's what I didn't want no more action. I wanted the game. I wanted to watch these people try to manipulate each other, work as hard as they can to make this a political drama like it should have been, compared to a political action like it was made to be. And I'm glad, because now looking back on that, I was afraid that they were going to put too much emphasis on the dragons and give their characters out and get away from the people. People is what really makes TV shows. Good entertainment makes TV shows. And calling you out here, if Disney would have taken some notes from House of the Dragon as a sequel that came out compared to putting it on to The Rise of Skywalker, I think you'd had a completely different fan base that have ran to Star Wars.
Yeah.
But
it just goes to show you how creative choices, the writing, and the people, the faces behind all the production, all the cast and crew, how much of that actually matters when you take such careful consideration of these things. That's what really makes it well done. And so obviously we're getting into the dance of the dragons. So there's going to be more dragons, probably. There's going to be more fights, more action. And so but we understand that that's kind of what it's going for.
And it should be, because they gave us the setup finally. They gave us a proper setup that we need in all Game of Thrones. They've always done that.
Yeah. And now they have a proper reason for certain characters to act in certain ways.
Yep.
And not every character is like one note, but every character has enough complexity where they can be a little bit flexible with the choices that they make. And that's okay. Yeah. And so I'm very excited. I'm excited for season 2. That'll come out who knows when. Please go watch this show. It is very good. And also, because I've had this conversation, this is sometimes a tough conversation to have. I've come across a lot of people who are like, I'm not sure about Game of Thrones because there's a lot of the blood, and then there's the sex and the nudity. And I'm like, that I understand that totally. If you feel like that is completely not for you, that's totally fine. But this show actually has much less of that. It has much less of that stuff.
And it's more of that drama that political drama, like I said, is what
it's a family drama. That's what it is. Yeah. It's a family drama with dragons. And that's cool.
And shout out to a YouTube channel where I got some of my inspiration for some of these ratings and reviews. Movie Overload. I watched, it's an amazing YouTube video. Go and watch that as well too, for some of his content. But he said a lot of things perfectly.
Yeah.
With it, I think he's the one that also said that it saved the Game of Thrones franchise. And I think that within this, we learned a lesson. I think more importantly, George R.R. Martin learned a lesson.
Yeah.
Watching the series, I could just tell. I feel like watching it was like, hey, I think George R.R. Martin has more of a say in what happens here. And that's why he's been lagging on The Winds of Winter, because he watched the dumpster fire that happened on season 8, and he needs to make sure the content that's coming out about this, his life work as represented properly
Yeah.
compared to.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, like you said, Christian, you have any last remarks? I know we a little bit longer than what we normally are, but
That's okay. The only thing I can say is please go watch the show. It's fantastic. Please go out and support the people who create and give us things like this. HBO Max, please sponsor us. Please go get HBO Max. It's a wonderful platform. It has access to all these things. And they have slowly accumulated greater and greater reputation. And I think it's well deserved. So please go support them. Go support the people who are able to give these things to us, because I mean, especially since COVID hit and whatnot, it's important that we are able to support the people who are willing to still pump out entertainment as good as this.
And again, kudos to you, HBO, Warner Brothers. You guys did an amazing job. You saved a series that a lot of us didn't have much hope for anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
And Disney, again, if you want to learn some lessons, really, I'd recommend you as well too, Mickey Mouse. Go ahead and watch House of the Dragon, so you can maybe even add that to some of the game or the Star Wars content that's coming out for the future.
Or Deadpool 3. With Marvel. Our eyes are watching very closely.
Yeah. And again, as always, like, subscribe, follow us on our Instagram page at the Big Screen Bulls Podcast. Share us on Spotify. Again, if you see that stranger on the side of the road or checking out in the grocery line, you tell them about the
That's right.
Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful one.